Hello there and welcome to the Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley. My name is Draxter Dupre and we're back with regular shows after a long break and sort of intermediate things here and there. But I am here and Joe is here. Hi, Joe. People got upset, Joe, because I reported from the Sundance Film Festival. And it was all about VR, and I got a couple of emails that said they're not going to subscribe any longer if we keep talking about VR as opposed to Second Life. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, who said that we were only going to talk about Second Life in the beginning?
Right. Nobody did. Go back and listen to 100+ episodes and find where Joe says we're never going to touch VR ever.
Listen, we are going to talk about things that we find interesting and we think are important, and that we think that most of our listeners will think is interesting and important. And I'm pretty interested in VR, and I think that most of our listeners are pretty interested in VR. And it's going to be big and it's going to be part of the world, whether we like it or not. So we will be talking about VR. Sorry.
And I also really want to say again what I've said before, that in my opinion, VR is a very convenient marketing term, right? And a lot of people got upset that, some articles sound like as if VR was practically, or Palmer Luckey invented VR with bringing the Oculus into the consumer space. I mean, that's obviously baloney. But also, although Second Life is mediated through a screen, in my mind, it is very much virtual reality.
It really doesn't matter what it is in your mind or anyone else's mind or what Palmer Luckey thinks. If you look up no, of course not. You look up the definition of virtual reality in a dictionary and you will see that it completely matches what Second Life is. End of story. We don't get to decide what something is. The dictionary does.
Awesome, Joe. And next, and I know you're ready to fire that off in many a comment section going forward. And
I've won many discussions by just pointing out what the definition is in a dictionary.
But seriously, also, dear listener, we really strive to have a balance. We're both very much engaged in the Second Life community. So we're going to be reporting on the Second Life community. We'll have guests from within that community. As a matter of fact, the bulk of the show today is about Project Bento, which is very much about Second Life. Project Bento updates the Second Life skeleton, and it had some of the brightest Linden Lab engineers working on this thing for months. That goes to show that, sorry, but it's in your face people who say there's nothing, no upgrades in Second Life. What was I going to say? Yeah, right. Housekeeping. You can get in touch with us, like Joe said. Please, submit story ideas and also press releases. So whatever event is coming up, you need to email that either to radio@draxfiles.com, leave us a voice message on Skype under Draxfiles, or I am the avatar Draxfiles in world. We cannot keep track of all this stuff. A lot of people say, why are you not covering this? But then they say it after the fact. So please send it before and we will cover it.
Yeah, because if you don't tell us what to talk about, we're going to have to talk about the things Drax thinks are interesting. And you don't want that.
Exactly.
Nobody wants that.
I am very interested in long-form literary fiction, and
why don't you go tell us again that you've got real paper books that you read?
Oh, right. I haven't gotten a chance of telling you guys that for a very long time, as a matter of fact.
Oh, did you tell us already that you don't have a television?
I actually do have one, but it's not plugged in. It's plugged into my computer so I can enjoy Second Life with it.
Yeah, anyway.
But I didn't watch the Super Bowl either. I'm sorry, Joe.
Yeah, well, let's take off our flip-flops and get back to interesting stories now.
Well, yeah, one of the more interesting stories is that the Vision Summit is happening as we're recording this and as this is coming out. A 2-day summit hosted by Unity in LA, where the creme de la creme of VR and AR developers are sort of gathering, and they all got a free HTC Vive. And at that summit, and we'll link to some of the keynotes, and we'll have some folks that were there on the ground on the show next week. Unity unveiled, as well as Unreal, unveiled a game engine or version of their respective game engines where you can build VR while you're in VR, essentially. So you're inside the game as you're building it. And, the reason I bring this up, obviously, is because Linden Lab is building Project Sansar, and I don't know how that affects them, that some of these other competitors are really putting pedal to the metal. Also, Amazon has the Lumberyard thing coming out. I should be more precise. The Lumberyard game engine from Amazon that ties in with the Amazon Web Services and Twitch. We'll talk a little bit more about that next week with an expert that knows a little bit more about game design. So these are all game design options, not necessarily virtual world. And I don't want to get into the semantics or the philosophy, what the difference is. But essentially, we're talking about empowering the user, as Linden Lab is attempting to do with Project Sansar and has proven to have done successfully with Second Life. Now, where are they, Joe? I mean, are they left in the dust already, or what?
It all depends on what way Sansar is going. If Sansar is going to be a lot like Second Life, and in which I mean, will it have the same things, the same parts that make it so important, so great, then there will be no competition, because Second Life offers us so much freedom. We can build what we want. We can look the way we want. It's a sandbox, but not. Second Life doesn't even give us the things we can build with. They just give us the tools, and we have to build these things. For instance, these game builders, they give you 50 cars, and then you can put them in a street. In Second Life, you have to build these cars yourself. And if Sansar is going to be as free as Second Life, you can build what you want, you can look the way you want, then I think they will still be miles ahead of everyone else, because so far everything I've seen has limits. They give you things to play with instead of letting you build them yourself.
Well, Unity and these other engines, they have marketplaces where you can buy stuff that are made by other people. So you could argue that there is a user-to-user community here, but obviously these people are more often than not real professionals. And I would argue that the Second Life community is composed of primarily amateurs and hobbyists, and I say this in the best sense of the word, because it's democratizing content creation. It brings people to the table who wouldn't otherwise be at the table.
In Second Life, everyone can create. I mean, of course, the more experience you've got, the better it will look. But everyone basically can build stuff, and that's why I'm so not worried, but so anxious about Sansar giving us those tools to make things easily, because if Sansar is going to be just another place where you have to buy stuff to build things with instead of making it yourself, if it doesn't have any building tools, if you have to go into 3D creation software to make something, then it's going to lose something that is so great about Second Life.
You're talking about in-world building, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is what Second Life. That's what makes Second Life so great. That anyone can build anything, and we have to go and wait and see how free we're going to be in Sansar.
Well, I'm torn here because earlier mentioned Apsi from Ferocious L, who went out there and said, okay, I'm going to learn Maya, I'm going to learn Blender, I'm going to learn these things. I've seen people learn them, and maybe it's the way of the future that a lot of stuff happens outside and then kind of gets imported in. But that doesn't mean that it's all a top-down approach. It just means users have to learn more or new skills.
Yeah, absolutely, I'm sure. But I don't think that's a good thing. Because in Second Life, if you want to build something nice, we all, use Mesh. We use in-world Mesh creators, or we learn Blender and Maya. We already do that. But no matter how complicated it becomes in Second Life to make something really good, you always have the prims. Everyone who joins can within an hour figure out how to make a basic little house.
We'll always have prims. I have had a brief interaction with a person named Ebbe. What's his name? Altman. Alt space. No, wait a minute. No, but Ebbe, we had a short IM interaction, and he asked me if I tried Toolbox, and I said I haven't tried it, but of course I've seen the videos. And he said it's actually really amazing how it feels to actually be in that moment, be there. And I asked him, so you feel like that even without a avatar representation? Because that's always my question. The avatar representation is very important to me personally, and I know to you as well, Joe. He said it's so accurate, the tracking and everything, that he really didn't mind, and he connected with that other person who was in Toolbox with him, collaboratively building, although that other person was just sort of a ghost-like figure.
Yeah, well, of course, the more realistic and easier our interactions become, the less dependent we'll be on how our avatars look. I mean, if you feel you are with someone even because of little gestures or the way they move, they don't have to completely look like someone.
That is, to me, a tendency that we cannot control. We'll see where the train is headed, but I would find that very sad if we, in fact, sort of abandon that intricacy of sort of identity exploration and be whoever we can be. Which leads me to the next subject, Altspace VR. There was an article on the nextweb.com, Altspace, and the title is Altspace VR is like Second Life finally came to virtual reality.
Yeah, they changed it though.
A lot of people got a little upset and commented on it, including myself. And I thought after I commented, it was maybe a little bit too harsh, so I sent the journalist an IM and sort of apologized that I didn't mean to sort of attack her, but just in general, that the article again sort of says that Second Life is sort of subpar to some of the stuff that's happening now. But let's face it, and I know a lot of people in Altspace that are working for the company, and I have the greatest respect for them, but the stuff does look like little bobbleheads. And here we are again. Yeah, but look, I mean, you just said, Joe, if you have a connection to that person, it doesn't really matter how that person looks, and I would disagree with that. I think
no. That's not what I said. I said it means it is less important, not important. I mean, if I'm with my sister in virtual reality and I see just her hands and just her face, I know it's her, because if you use all the modern technologies to have the same sort of gestures the way she has in real life, someone becomes themselves more than they need to be with an avatar.
Right. And especially, okay, good. Thanks for clarifying that. And I would assume, especially for 1920s Berlin or any type of time travel or sort of role play, I mean, you need to be decked out and be able to explore your own identity.
Yeah, 90% of all VR experiences will depend on realism. I'm pretty sure about that. Games, films, theater, shopping. You want to see someone who looks like a real person. But if you want to feel like you're in the 1920s, you don't want to see people walking around who are half transparent or,
right.
You want real people.
And I would even add also that, realism, but even more so, again, the agency over what you want to represent. So that could be very realistic, could be cartoonish, could be a flying toaster oven with wings or whatever. So let's move on to the third subject here before we go to a little music break and then the Bento panel. So while we were sort of off the air, off and on with some reruns and some special shows, Oculus was available for pre-order, and I think the pre-order sold out in 14 minutes or whatever, something like that. And it's it's very pricey, and a lot of people commented on how pricey it is. I mean, what is it? It's like $599 in the US. In Germany, in Europe, it is even more expensive. It's not even just calculated what the euro is, but it's like 700 euros, which is...
Yeah, you get to $1,000 pretty easily with shipping and all that. But to be fair, the price is probably not that crazy. It's just that people didn't expect it to be so high, which makes it even worse. And a big problem is that it is slowing things down a little bit. I mean, the VR revolution or renaissance, it's still coming. People are still all going to buy it. There's going to be one in every house, but it's not going to be this year. We are in the early phases of VHS recorders and the CD players. First, they're going to be very expensive and only a few people are going to buy them.
Ebbe actually said on Lab Chat, and that was interesting, he said that it's, they're losing money on that price when you look at the technology that is built into the thing, very high quality components. Obviously, the headphones are built in, the controller, the sensor, and the touch controllers. But I don't know. I mean, I have no idea how much that stuff costs.
I doubt they're actually losing money on it.
I'd be skeptical too.
Yeah, they may not be making a lot of profit on it.
So you need the games. You need the content. The content is king. If there's no content, there's no reason to get it.
If I was Lucky Palmer, I would have said, here's the full version. You get all the stuff that we talk about. It's going to cost you $600. Here you go, just a headset. No headphones, no controllers, no normal box, and you can get that for $350 or $400. That's what I would have done.
Well, we'll see what Apple is doing. We're going to link to a bunch of rumors that Apple is working on stuff. And Jeremy Bailenson from the Stanford Virtual Human Interaction Lab tweeted something. And actually, Jeremy Bailenson is going to be on the show very soon. I'm talking to him, and we're trying to figure out the timing, but he tweeted something like Apple people haven't visited him in his lab in Stanford for years, and the last year they visited him 10 times. Mm-hmm. So Apple is cooking something up.
Yes, and they're also they've also been filing one patent after another. They've got loads and loads of little gadgets have designed that have something to do with VR. So they're definitely working on something. And you know that if Apple makes it, it's going to work, it's going to look really good, and it's probably going to cost 5 times as much as anything else. But it's going to be good. It's going to be exciting. I wonder what they're doing, if they're going for augmented or VR.
Real quick, you sent me something that the cheapest supermarket in Holland sells VR sets for phones.
Yeah, but it is actually just a holder for your phone. But they are €15.
So it's like a little bit like cardboard.
Yeah, it is exactly like cardboard, except plastic. And they've been selling like hotcakes. People love them, and they're really happy with them. And I think that it may end up eventually that little things like these, or 3D printed, or things like that these are going to be leading the VR renaissance and not the expensive ones, because this is how hundreds of thousands of people will have their first experience with VR. This is how they'll be watching football games and how they'll...
I mean, this is from a company, this is HEMA, the HEMA chain, and they look really solid. I mean, they look a lot more, obviously they're plastic, so they're a lot more solid than the cardboard ones. And you seem to be, when I look at this video, you seem to be really kind of closed in. So the criticism that you can kind of peek out and lose the immersion is not an issue here.
It's a scuba headset, a diving headset, but you just click your phone in it. Yeah, it's like very much like an Oculus Rift idea. Yeah, exactly. And people are loving it. They're selling so many of them, and it's brilliant. Because everyone wants an Oculus, nobody can afford it, and then there's this. And people are going to get this, and they're going to love it, and then maybe one day they'll buy the more expensive one.
Right, and that's exactly, Palmer Lucky's, again, replicating the business model his father had, the Lexus dealership right next to the Fiat dealership. So, if you can't afford a Lexus, go over to the Fiat dealership, get yourself a little tiny tricycle.
Maybe it works better.
Maybe. All right, let's go to a musical interlude and then to our panel of content creators who were playing around with Project Bento, which is really, really cool. We're going to play a song by Tamara Hayden, who is a Second Life musician extraordinaire. And the song is called Black is the Color. Here's Tamara Hayden.
Black is the color of my true love. lives here. His face is like a rose so fair. He's got the sweetest face and the strongest hands. I love the ground whereon he stands. I love my love, and well he knows I love the ground whereon he goes, and how I wish the day would come when he and I can be as one. I go to the Clyde for to mourn and weep, satisfied I will never sleep till I write him a letter, just a few short lines, and suffer death 10,000 I love my love, and well he knows I love the ground whereon he goes. He's got the sweetest face and the gentlest hands. I love the ground whereon he stands. I love the ground whereon he stands.
Amara Hayden with Black is the Color. Coming up, my conversation I taped earlier with Aki Shiriochi, Medhu Simoni, Mahatma from Project Bento. These are all content creators that were not part of the developing team between Linden's Residence and Malls, but came in onto Aditi, the Second Life test grid, to play around with Project Bento functionality, the new skeleton, and came out very quickly with some really compelling stuff. Let's go to Aki first to kind of summarize for the uninitiated what Project Bento really is and what it enabled her to do.
Basically, what it involves is adding quite a number of new bones to the existing SL avatar. And what that would allow creators to do is to rig more content to more bones that move in relation to your avatar. Wings, tails, we have a lot more facial animations, and that sort of thing. So, it's a nifty little, a big project.
It's kind of a big project, and people have been saying, why, they're not saying like, why didn't you do this 8 years ago? But kind of like, that's what I was thinking. Like, oh, we needed this a long time ago. I mean, it's really cool that it's happening finally. And you jumped in and you immediately started working on a centaur. So my understanding is there's bones in the face, but some of these other bones you can kind of shift around a little bit, right? I mean, how were you able to make a centaur? You took the bones that are in the legs and the arms, and then just made legs out of them.
To some degree. So they're giving us wings. So each wing has, I believe it's three new bones, and then there are three root wing bones that branch off the back of, I believe it's the chest bone. And basically what that allows us to do is to make use of those wing bones as separate limbs, and then also use the intermediary bones between the chest and the wings to offset the animation. So it's kind of a hacky solution for now, and I'm not sure if that'll change between now and release, but basically that's allowed me to use the wings for my centaur's hind legs, and basically the wing root bones span down into the torso and into the pelvis, and then backwards into the centaur's hindquarters.
Mm-hmm. Let's make sure for people who don't know what's going on, this is happening on a DD right now. So this is on the test grid, and in that sense, it's not live. You still have to get a special viewer, and you can get that starter skeleton to play with. Now, let me introduce the other guest. Mehu Simoni is on, and you we can see in the video that I made, we can see your wolf and your elephant, and those are existing creatures. But what did you do with them in regards to Bento?
Well, originally I had made them for the Unity 3D platform. Anybody can easily take a mesh and then, put it on a new skeleton. So when we got the new Bento bones, I thought these were perfect examples of animals that are going to utilize these extra bones. So I used them and rigged them up. And there are creative ways to, especially for the elephant, the wings were used for the elephant's ears. The trunk, which is pretty important for an elephant, I used the tail, and because the tail isn't as important, I used the groin bone for the tail.
And now, Mahatma, we met. You showed up to the filming with a tail that has a face on it, and the face can kind of like open its mouth. And so, what were you working on? I think you added a whole face rig for your furry. Can I call you? Are you part of the furry culture?
Oh, kind of.
Yeah.
I say always that the humans are kind of boring. There is lots of them.
Yeah.
But furries are piece by piece, everything original. It's more fun to make.
What did you make with so you started with the tail, and the tail is wiggly, and you just used the tailbone, or what else did you do with Bento functionality?
Well, I would, as probably from the start, I was told by Kenny to make something Melanie and funny for, what's the name of that Melanie Linden? No worries.
Do you mean Torley?
Yes, totally.
Melon. You call him Melon. Well, I think he has to change his name now.
So he told me to make something funny for her, and so I did. I was playing with the Bento for a while by then, and was making that wolf Avi. I pretty much put my wolf Avi on hold because of the Bento, because it would be illogical to make something basic, and when one can do miracles with this one. And so pretty much it came to that. I used the tail bones completely, and only the last bone of the tail for the mouth, on the mouth tail it's called, I think. So all it does is pretty much wiggle all the 6 bones on the tail, and the 7 is the mouth.
So this is something that Oz kind of explains very briefly in the video, but maybe you guys can explain this to the layman like myself. Why is it that this stuff that is adding so much functionality and so much liveliness and expressiveness to the avatar, not bogging down the system even more?
Well, basically, there are a lot of things. If you want to do certain things in Second Life, it's almost limitless what we can do. But, the question is it smart to do that? Because how much lag are you going to create doing that? So a lot of things right now in Second Life are handled by scripts. Now, scripts, take a lot of resources to run and then create the action and everything. Whereas if you have bones and you can just use animation, then that can be almost completely handled by the viewer. And it takes a load off the servers from running all those scripts.
From what I understand, the scripts work this way, that the scripts are actually run on the server and we can see only the result of it, and it all needs to be transferred. And that's the problem, because animation, it's transferred only once and then that's it. You activate it, deactivate it, that's all.
Mm-hmm. Aki, is there anything you would add?
I personally find that it's definitely going to lighten the load in terms of a lot of the creative back end that I've had to do for my avatars. For example, my own solution for making tails within Second Life up until Bento was to animate a tail and then take keyframes of it and then alpha switch. And that's not the greatest solution, especially if, say, for example, you have an avatar that's a little bit more complex than it ought to be. You don't really want to be duplicating that geometry over and over again just to animate motion or to, say, for example, like I think you may be familiar, but some folks have mesh replacement heads and they'll have a lot of different expressions. And currently the way that that's accomplished is alpha switching, which means you have lots and lots of extra geometry, and that really presents a negative experience.
Like having 10 heads and on at all times.
So Bento will allow a lot more flexibility in terms of expressions. It will allow people to dispense with a lot of this extra geometry that they're not using, more than, say, 90% of the time,
Your centaur looks like a lot of work to me. I mean, do you think that people now jump in? I'm sorry, I'm jumping to a different subject here, and we'll go back and forth. But it just occurred to me: is there enough creative potential out there? People who have the time and the resources to dive into it and really take advantage of this feature. I'm asking myself a lot this question. It seems Linden Lab is actually churning out a lot of features for Second Life, but then relatively few people are actually implementing them.
Well, I think it's easy to look at my avatars or Matthew's avatars or Mahatma's avatars, and it's easy for us to say, okay, well, these are like totally out of the ordinary avatars, but I think Bento also presents a lot of positive change for even very human-based content creation. Say, for example, clothing. People who are making mesh replacement parts are also going to really have a great time with facial expressions, with hand posture, and then also like people who like to make pets. We'll be able to add flying pets, or shoulder pets, or you could animate something a little bit more easily, just like in your arms. Let's say you wanted to hold a puppy dog or something like that. Depending on how it's put together, there's so many possibilities that are brought up with Bento. And I'm sure that these will be explored quite a bit. And I'm sure it's going to take some time.
There is also great potential for profanity using the hands.
There is. There definitely is.
That will be the first one to be explored, I guess.
Well, actually, I do have the flipping off animation made by Silent Mole, and I filmed it, but I couldn't put it in the video. I have the imp in the little chute there, and he's flipping everybody off consistently after he's headbanging for a half hour. Medhu, you're posting a lot in the forum. So there's a forum, and there seems to be a bunch of bugs. What's the state of affairs right now?
I don't really think there's a lot of bugs right now. I mean, we are working out a few minor ones now, and sometimes bugs are just perceived because of how different everybody does things too. So I think that's part of the problem with Second Life, is that we're all doing things in different ways. So one of us sees a bug and it's, layers deep behind one or two different things, and it's difficult to figure out. But as far as bugs go, with Bento, I'm pretty happy with how things are going.
Is there any bones? I know Tiger is someone who I met, and she's making horses, and she was posting that there needed to be an additional bone, either an additional bone or the bone changed to a different position for her to make a really good horse. What do you guys think about the decision? Because the decision was made with the NDA group that I was part of, just sort of fly on the wall was my position, but they made a decision to use this amount of bones based on the stress testing, and but Tiger and others have said the bones are not positioned well.
I think that is not that much of a problem, because one can move the bones anyway. Just like with my tail, the original one is about 1/4 of the length. So I just make it bigger and put it there. Not much of a problem. Problem is more with the linking of the bones. So there is lots and lots of them on the head, but the head is very central part of any avatar. So one cannot do much about that unless you would make the whole avatar out of the head.
Right.
Because the bones are always parent-child, and it goes on and on into a tree structure. The pelvis, I think, is the root bone of the avatar, and from there it goes. If you rotate the root bone, everything rotates. If you rotate something down the road, only that rotates. So you have now, at the moment, for the Aki's centaur, there are wing bones, and they are used as the legs for the centaur because it is not a human shape. So you use the bones that are used for wings because they are pretty much close to the structure the horse would have. But it is not perfect. Because it is, I think, on the torso bone and not on the pelvic bone, because that would be, I think, or lower torso would be better link for that kind of avatar. But it is on the torso bone, and so you have to work with that. Everything is pretty much improvisation, I always say. It's engineering.
Starting out playing with Bento, I was having a look at, this was the first hour that Gaia Clary had put out Avstar 2.0, which is the beta for the Bento project, and
it's awesome.
I was playing around with that, and I within the first couple hours, I lost heart because I found out that the wings are attached to the torso, to the joint between the torso and the chest bone. And almost immediately I lost heart because I didn't see a way to get those wings to work as additional limbs that weren't attached to the chest. And, I started, again, this kind of touches back on the comment that Medhu made about people not necessarily having correct workflows, or not. Basically, we need to explore, right? And the whole process for me with the Centaur was exploring what is possible and trying to reassess the things that seemed obvious to me. These were limits that I had to work through, basically, and there was a lot of development behind getting to where I am now, and I'm sure that I can take that with me for new development.
For your own workflow. But if you could give us a few specific examples, I mean, what was really the challenge here?
The first issue was finding out that the wings inherit animation from the chest and torso. So, which means that you absolutely need something to offset that animation. So figuring out how to do that was the first big step for me. And then also figuring out how best to offset that while I was animating. And I would hope that in the near future, tools will be added to the tool that I'm using, that will help make this a little bit easier to deal with. But yeah, it's just an ongoing process.
It's a fine line between, as an animator, you want to talk about, how many bones, I want on the skeleton. Give me unlimited bones, but we can't do that, So, but as I look at the skeleton now, I think we're pretty good. I think we have a good set of bones, not too many, not too few. Of course, we're still tweaking it. I mean, not we. Linden Lab is still tweaking it. So, with the issue that Tiger brings up with the neck, I think it's definitely an interesting issue because a lot of animals, the second life skeleton only has one neck bone. Okay, so and a lot of animals could benefit from more neck bones. So that's really the issue that she is dealing with. And it's solvable, yes. I mean, I think what none of us have mentioned yet is the implementation of bone translation, which was a huge deal. When Linden Lab accepted that, I mean, that opened up the skeleton for all kinds of things. And like Mahatma said, about the facial bones. Yes, she can move them wherever she wants. Now, how easy that is to do and tedious with the tools that we have is kind of her problem that she's dealing with, and she's trying to solve by adding, which I think we could do. We could add like a root face bone, and she could just move that around. So there are solutions, and the skeleton's not final yet, but it will be soon.
Yeah, it would be really nice to see some means of moving the face around, like the face bones around. I've run into similar issues. I have been able to get around having only one bone for the neck by actually converting wing bones over and using those. And if you do that, you have an ample number of bones, or like as you've done, Medhu, for the elephant trunk. But the problem is translating those face bones. And unfortunately, until that happens, any ideas I have with avatars that would have more flexible necks, it's just probably not going to happen until then.
What do you guys use? You mentioned tools, Aki. And again, I mean, I don't want to assume too. I think our audience is pretty broad. There are people who are very well versed in functionality of old and new features, and some people are maybe not. And to them, it might seem really intimidating to get started. But there are starter tools available. I mean, there's Avastar, there's MayaStar for these two programs. What programs do you guys use? If you could give us a little glimpse into the workflow. Not in too much detail, but just kind of to dispel some myths that you have to be an absolute god to even get started, or a trader like Medhu, who also works in Unity. Medhu, I'm very disappointed in you. No, I knew that before. Okay, Aki, go ahead.
So I've always worked with Blender. Hopefully in the near future I'll be moving to Maya, mainly because if you're looking at like industry standard programs, most people look for Maya. So that's a tool that I'm looking to add to my toolbox. But I've really found Blender very useful for work in Second Life to begin with, and it's also been very helpful that Avastar has been pretty much right up there with all the development for this thus far.
I use Blender. I mean, I talk about Blender all the time, and I love Blender. I play with Maya a little bit. Blender is more suited to what I want to do and what I want to do in the future. So Blender's the ticket for me. But as far as like, I know we've talked about this before about how complex all of this is, and there's aren't that many people playing around with these bones on the.
Here's the thing. I've always found that adoption of new technology in Second Life has always been tied to basically the areas that are most closely tied around the human avatar. So, for example, clothing, skins, hair, all that. But way back when we were in beta for Mesh, for example, heavy use of mesh for clothing was not something on the Lindens' minds.
That's a great point.
It seriously wasn't. And yet when we take a look at the vast majority of mesh use in Second Life right now, it's for the avatar. And specifically, it's for the human avatar. So once content creators in those markets can figure out what they want to do with these new bento bones, I think you're going to see a lot more adoption of that. And then hopefully, like if bento is implemented between now and, let's say, Fantasy Fair, I'd be really interested to see what kind of neat things we'll see there, So I think, unfortunately, like as you mentioned while filming, there just weren't all that many people. I think a lot of people, there's many factors involved. A lot of people are really kind of a little reticent to put their time into such a big potential time suck. I don't know how much time I've put together on this centaur already, but it's quite a bit. The problem is that, yes, a lot of us would really love to jump in and do that, but on the other hand, a lot of us are also spending already like 12 to 14 hours a day working on content that we could sell, right? So a lot of people are reticent to pull themselves away from that.
And I have to mention that we invited a Bremelin Wolf, master animator with a mocap studio in Edinburgh, Scotland, and in the video it can be seen the angel with the finger dance, and he has also his wife made a Matrix Kung Fu move animation, and it's just marvelous. And Bremelin couldn't make it. I hope to have him on a future show, because that's of course amazing potential that I can see with the fingers. Maybe sign language could even be sort of. Somebody could make a sign language HUD or something.
That would be bloody awesome.
Aki, what are you working on? The centaur? What comes after the centaur?
Well, like Matthew, I'm actually kind of holding off on too much more bento until we either have new functionality to test or until we're a bit closer to release. Unfortunately, I'm kind of stuck in between a number of different events right now, so I have to get an avatar done, I have to get some decor stuff done. So I'm spending most of my time right now on the main grid trying to get all that pulled together.
Once it goes live, will people go and buy new avatars? I mean, I love my avatar. What should I do? What would you recommend?
Furries will go bonkers.
Furries? Oh yeah, they're already bonkers.
The tails, the animated tails.
My final question, though, on this note, it would be: this was predicted many times, and I remember it was predicted with voice. When voice came to Second Life, it was predicted by some that people who don't use voice will be sort of ghettoized, and they will be looked upon as sort of outcasts and sort of like, look at them, and they have some sort of communicable disease or whatever because they don't want to use voice. That never happened. It coexists. No. Don't you think like now, then I'm looking, it's like, now I'm looking kind of arrogantly towards a 2006 avatar with a flat skin. Is that how people are going to look at me?
Keeping in mind that the vast majority of content that is created is for the human avatar, I think we'll see a lot of creative add-ons Say, for example, if someone wanted to make a train for a nice ball gown or something like that, they could use Bento to do that. If somebody wanted to, let's say, create long trailing sleeves for their garments, they might be able to rig it that way so that you don't have to worry about arm movements conflicting with the movement of fabric, for example, or capes, or having neat new elf ears, that kind of thing. Like I think we'll see a lot of add-ons.
And plus, all of that will work with the normal default avatar.
Exactly.
So that was Aki Shiriochi. I hope I don't butcher her name. Medhu, Simoni, and Mahatma on Project Bento. Joe, we're at the end of the show. Are you excited about Project Bento?
Yeah, I mean it's especially the fingers and the face having more ways to express ourselves is going to be fun.
Then you will finally have to upgrade your avatar too, I think.
Yeah, but nobody's making mesh for avatars that look like 40-year-old women who look always grumpy.
Do you hear that, listeners? This is really the niche that you got to fill. 40-year-old women who look grumpy. Start with Hillary Clinton and then work yourself back. Woo. Did we forget anything?
We may have briefly touched it, but didn't really talk about the Mars picture, Sansar picture that Ebbe put on Twitter.
Ebbe put a picture on Twitter and said something like a couple of hours and Project Sansar, they could build a Mars Mars experience. Then people said, of course, that's misleading because it's probably using pre-made 3D content that is just sort of put in there real quick. So, and I think he then
he confessed.
He confesses all prefab Mars stuff.
Well, he said very politically, he said that they had to leverage some assets they had. So that's politicians speak.
Yeah, but so what's the big deal? I mean, the deal here again is what we touched on this earlier. When you look at some of the other engines, and these are specific game design engines, we're not talking about virtual world engines, although I guess you could build a virtual world with Unreal and Unity and whatever way you can do whatever you want. But the Sansar, I think, can win this battle or race or whatever if it's easy enough to arrange those things for someone who does not have particular programming experience but has an idea.
This is what most people in Second Life do right now. They buy land and then they buy stuff on Marketplace and put it on the land. So that there's nothing shocking there. The interesting thing is here.
And then they do things on that land, and that is shocking and has never been reported on it. We really gotta. Sorry.
The interesting thing about the picture is that apparently in a couple of hours they recreated a Mars landscape because we see rocks, we see sand, we see the sun, we see the sky. So it's probably not going to be cold wind light, but we've got a wind light setting. Using the old Second Life term. It's very difficult to see what exactly is that they did in those couple of hours, but the result is that we've got an immersive landscape, and I see someone walking on a rock with a spacesuit, which is nice.
Yeah, and there is that we already know. I think Eva was on the record of it, and that's something that I've seen. So I guess, although I am under NDA, I can say that much, that there is a physics engine and that there is some real compelling sort of physical behavior that you as the avatar have with the environment. And so they got that puzzle piece working for them. So, well, as propaganda minister department, we root for the team.
We're just going to say that Sansar is no good until they allow us in.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
Sansar is no good.
Right.
Let us in.
It sucks.
Yeah.
If you don't let us in, we're going to...
Let's try that. Yeah,
we're going to bitch about it every week.
Oh, it's awful.
That's some kind of that's the pressure we can sort of leverage as the media, I mean, with seven listeners and counting. I mean, come on.
How about you going to say that Sansa is fantastic, and I'm going to say it's awful, and then see who of us two first gets access.
Good cop, bad cop. That always works. I mean, that's good.
I'm too good at being a bad cop.
Okay, so we're at the end of the show. I just want to say real quick that I have a store coming finally, a store on Marketplace with some really cool stuff. The next week we will reveal what it is, and I'm really excited about it. Joe, anything for the weekend real quick? Anything planned, events or whatever?
Well, the Americans in Berlin are going to celebrate something that's called Valentine's Day, which is sort of new to 1920s Berlin.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
So we're going to have a swanky dance and a nice party at the Hotel Adlon, which would be nice.
Right. And we need to link to a Linden Lab contest. I forgot the details, but...
Oh, yes, I heard about that.
Right. You can put up a story with photos. I think you can win some prizes. I have to look it up and put it on the blog. To end the show with, we have some outtakes. I mean, I have tons of outtakes from the interviews I conducted over the course of 6 months when Linden Lab was working on Project Bento, and I got so much good stuff from Linden's and also the content creators who worked on it. I'll dole out those goodies over time. Let's start today with a few minutes from Coyote Linden, senior software engineer at Linden Lab, to end the show with. Here he is on various aspects of Project Bento. He can also be seen in the video, of course, that we'll link to. That's it for the show. Thanks for listening, and goodbye, Joe.
Auf Wiedersehen.
My name is Coyote Linden. I am a software developer at Linden Lab. If you're not in puberty, your focus when you talk to somebody is their face. If you're in puberty, the focus is somewhere else, right? And there's been discussion about that sort of animation and joint work too. But and I'm not discounting that. That's an important part of the economy and everything else, right? But in terms of a mature product, then the face becomes more important. It's how we communicate. And the more human, really human they are, see the way it laughs, right? When I laugh, and it would be awesome if it laughed when I laughed, because Coyote laughs a lot. Humanizing the relationship among people, and that really gets people to where they are, even if it's magical realism or surreal realism. If you're talking to a dragon and it moves its eyebrow, right, that's very different than talking to a stuffed puppet. When you animate a face, for example, you use many joints that don't actually exist because you're simulating muscle work, right? You're using more bones than actually exist, cold bones, in the human body because you're using joints and bones and the animation of those joints to simulate the myofascial action, right? So if you try to, for example, animate the raising of your eyebrows, since the avatar doesn't have muscles, right? You're going to have, for each eye on the top, probably at least 2 bones and a joint right there, just to make a kind of triangular raising, right? And then wrap the mesh, kind of around that to smooth it. And likewise, if you wanted to make it really realistic, then you have to have joints on your cheekbones or your below your eyes that go up in synchronous behavior animation with the upper eyes in order to make it look realistic, because that's how human faces actually work. Now you can live without that, but you may get yourself in toward the uncanny valley where things look sort of realistic but not completely realistic. One way of saying the Second Life isn't dead is, we make, a very large quarterly profit, quarter after quarter after quarter after quarter. I have a job that I love and a product that I love, and the company I am working for is in no danger of going out of business. That means a lot to me in job security. But the other thing is, you can do anything in Second Life that you want to. We work at a scalability level that frightens most people, right? When I talk to people in my field about the number of servers that we work with, I mean, in terms of number of machines, complexity, and so on, they're like, their eyes glaze over, right? It's a tough gig, but we love it because it's a tough gig, not the other way around.
The Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley is a weekly production of Basic Drax Entertainment. The show is supported by Maven Homes, Giza Creations, Botanicals, Strawberry Sing, Abraminations, Eros Avatars, Caravelle Design, Giant Stale Races Every Saturday, The Cube Republic, the Avazines Publication Family, What Next, Duchy Furniture, Landscapes Unlimited, Orphans, Fallen Gods Incorporated, Ferocious L, and Death Row Designs. Contact the show via Skype, DraxFiles, Avatar, DraxFiles, or email radio@draxfiles.com.